What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Shout out to everyone who put their comments on the last video where I talked about getting another Division game. And it's really interesting to see that this particular line of conversation is of interest to a lot of people. So I just want to go ahead and thank you guys. I did see your comments and we're going to be highlighting a few of them in regard to this video, and we're going to be talking about them. Now, I am quite optimistic about a lot of things, but I do try my best to have circumstances and data that I can cite to point to why I think something is going to be that way. Sometimes they sound crazy. Some of my audience members will say things like, oh boy, here we go again. Keep wishing and eventually you'd be right. That's pretty cute. Anyways, Shatik, shout out to you. And you said this, you said if the argument, that is the argument that we're going to be getting another game, is somewhere in Massive, there are posted notes, lines of code, or whatever water cooler talk of ideas for a Division 3 game, then you were correct. The Division 2 sold well enough to justify a third entree in the franchise, but as it stands, it's unlikely. Beyond the Star Wars and Avatar game, Ubisoft as a company are crumbling. They have scrapped almost 5 games that were in active development, and their marketing campaigns were close to finished or released. Games such as Hype Escape, that was scrapped, that was already finished. Ghost Recon Battle Royale never made it out of whatever it was. Rainbow Six Extraction flopped, along with 3 other unannounced projects. And even their cash cow Rainbow Six Siege is falling off a bit, and Skull and Bones and Exifine were delayed for massive overhauls. Right now, Ubisoft as a company can't justify spending the money on Division 3 and putting games in needs on the back burner for a series with a cult following. I say this as someone who loves both games. So thanks for your comment. And I agree with a lot of what it is that you said. The only part is that Ubisoft cannot justify putting up money for Division 3. I would have agreed with that particular sentiment if I was looking at a production of a Division 3 starting anytime soon. The reality is if there's a Division game coming after the Division 2, its development would have started a long time ago. Many of you were here in the community and you saw how the Division 2 actually became a thing. We had a lot of different hypotheses thinking the game was going to be coming soon, but most of you don't remember, maybe most of you do. The announcement for the Division 3 was, well, for Division 2, sorry, was nothing epic. It was just a state of the game, and literally Julian was sitting on a couch and just basically dropped this news that they were making a Division 3 game. Listen to it. I'll play it for you guys so you can basically reminisce.
I'm thrilled on behalf of the team at Massive and the teams that are working on the Division worldwide to exclusively announce to our community first that we're working on the sequel to the Division.
So, on behalf of the team at Massive and the teams worldwide working on the Division sequel, that they were going to be dropping that game. Not long after that, we got to see gameplay for the game at E3, and then we got the game the first quarter, in our calendar anyways, of 2019. Basically, around the year end for Ubisoft 2018. The reason that you basically have to go for this circumstance is the game's announcement to release was a very short window. At this time, we already knew they were working on the Avatar game a year prior to this announcement. So somewhere, somehow, Ubisoft doesn't seem like they're interested, in my opinion, in telling all of their cards at the same time. A lot of stuff is kept very close to the chest. Another thing that was written in that comment, and I don't necessarily blame anyone because it seems like a lot of the games outlets are just touting these messages with headlines that are not looking very carefully at what the information is saying. So what I'll do is I'm going to go through this one article that talks about Ubisoft's cancellations of video games and some of the reasons that have been cited. And we're going to basically look through just to see if this so-called Ubisoft as a company is crumbling narrative has any basis in fact, or is it just people making conclusions that may not necessarily have anything to support it? So this article by Ryan Brown says, Ubisoft cancels 3 games and slashes targets, citing worsening microeconomic conditions. And they write the key points. Ubisoft said it expects third quarter net bookings to come in at 725 million euros, which is basically 779.4 million, and then lower than the earlier target of 830 million euros. They also said the French game developer cited poor performance of its Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope and its Just Dance 2023 titles, as well as challenging economic environment. And Ubisoft said 2022 net bookings will likely fall 10% after an earlier forecast called for 10% in those bookings. Now, Ubisoft canceled 3 unannounced games and slashed its full-year financial targets Wednesday, blaming worsening macroeconomic conditions. This is a fact. This is not something that any company is going to be able to really control. You got to deal with it. if you look, even the big dogs are slashing workers left and right. Apple, Google, Amazon, well, maybe not Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and some other companies are basically letting go of workers because they're trying to maintain profitability. Now, I'm not saying these companies are actually suffering. It's just they usually do this in order to basically hedge themselves financially and basically are able to cut down a little bit so as they can maintain and reduce their expenses and keep their their revenue as big, or their pot as big as possible. The French game publisher said it expects third quarter 2022 net bookings to come in at 725 euros, which is basically 779 lower than an earlier target of 830 million euros. Okay, so basically it's off by 90 million euros. All right, we can see that. The company cited poor performance of Mario Rabbids. The full year of its bookings are falling, and they're delaying Skull and Bones again. And they're basically saying that we're clearly disappointed at our recent performance. We're facing contrasted market dynamics as the industry shifts towards mega brands and everlasting live games. Now, this is what I wanted to go ahead and jump in order to continue this conversation, is because with the mega brands, you're already seeing that they're already not so mega branded games. And I don't say it's not mega brand because Mario is a mega brand, but Mario Rabbids is not really that much of a mega brand, in my opinion. Like a Ubisoft Mario game, if it was a Nintendo game, you can probably maybe cite it as such. Or maybe in the past, the Rabbids game have done well, but I won't know. I don't play it. These market mega brand movement doesn't mean that Ubisoft is crumbling. In fact, Ubisoft has two mega brands sitting right now in their hands. They have one, the Avatar mega brand, which is probably a game that is almost finished and will be releasing soon. And then they have a Star Wars mega brand. So to say Ubisoft is crumbling without paying attention to these two things is not necessarily giving a full picture. The second thing that you have to consider is Ubisoft, within its own development line and its video games, also has mega brands. Now, I don't know to what extent you'd call it a mega brand, but if you're actually a gamer, you know two things. Two things are true. GTA is a big name and Assassin's Creed is a big name. There's no doubt about that. GTA is a big name. Far Cry is a big name. Not saying that one game is as big as the other. I said the name. So brand names are big, and Ubisoft has got itself a good number of brand name games that it can continue to leverage. And The Division is actually one of those brand name games. Not as big as, say, maybe the others, but it is also not as small as people make it out to seem. Because I think that's what we here in the community continue to do. Like, well, the player counts seem to not necessarily reflect, what exactly this game could or should be. But that's also because The Division has always been some sort of a niche game. It's not till years later that people from Destiny discover The Division and realize that the game actually has a lot of what they like in a video game. And it's not necessarily the most user-friendly game anyways. So, of course, you're not necessarily going to get everybody coming in to play it. But it doesn't still mean that it doesn't have a good number of players who'll be happy to jump into it. Another thing, too, is a lot of the shooter players in the world prefer specific games like Call of Duty, games that just, that are not necessarily as intricate as The Division. So these are different things that you have to consider. But I see no reason why Ubisoft would abandon its own IPs to just prioritize these so-called mega brands that they will be pretty much splitting profits with. Which brings me to another question. Now, a lot of people saying that The Division might not necessarily be a thing. I have a question for you. If you were the head of Ubisoft, your company is not basically being profitable because you're busy making Mario and Just Dance, what should you do? Should you continue to make Mario, Just Dance, and Hype Escape because you're going to most likely cancel them? Or should you jump in and focus and bury down on the IPs that have made you money in the past, looking at the formulas that you used to make those games and what fans enjoyed from them, and pretty much giving fans exactly what it is they're asking for? The answer is the latter. You jump back into the thing that made you money. This is why Assassin's Creed is going back to the Mirage old school Assassin's Creed style game. Already you're seeing Ubisoft is adjusting to the market forces and making those moves. The unannounced projects that were canceled were probably not going to fit into this particular area of their video games. That's the hardcore old school games. Even their latest Far Cry game was barely scratched the surface, and they had to go back and try to retcon some of their, OG bosses in DLC format just to be able to make this game resonate. So already they're going back to the basics, back to the drawing board, because they understand and look at the books. They can look at the books and say, this is what made us money. We're going to go back there. If the Division 3 or another Division game was going to be in production, Ubisoft Massive would already have been doing it at the same time. I'll go back and show you, and I only found this on SkillUp's YouTube channel. This is the reveal of the Division 2. This was the official first reveal of the game.
I'm thrilled on behalf of the team at Massive and the teams that are working on the Division worldwide to exclusively announce to our community first that we're working on the sequel to the Division.
That's literally how they announced it. There was no big party. There was no big shout out or whatever it is. They just went ahead and just dropped the announcement that they were working on a Division game. Keep in mind that they were already working on the Avatar game at the time they made this announcement, and the Division 2 pretty much made its way about a year plus after this announcement, I think. Because if you think about that announcement, it was made sometime early 2018 or so. My memory might be a little foggy, but at the end of the day, we were able to get this game in such a short period of time. But when did they start developing the Division 2 game? Immediately after the Division 1 was released. They almost wasted no time. So if, say, they wanted to start a new Division project today, I would agree that the company might not be in a place to actually start that project. But if a Division project was already in the works, this is where I can't agree that they would ever slash that project, because already this game needs that project. You cannot consider, you can't consider the Division 2 and its limitations and start to think about adding more to this franchise. I see a lot of people saying they need to grow the Division 2. You really can't. You still have this game running on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Those consoles are going to sever into a million pieces if you continue to add more of this Division content. We already see the game basically facing challenges on a lot of new hardware even, and these are from their server side or whatever it may be with their anti-cheat. And so I think an overhaul is necessary, but not necessarily an overhaul that's going to be dealing with this game, but one that promises future profitability. Also, you think about the amount of people who've ever seen The Division, and I must cite this number. There are over 40 million people that have seen The Division. It does have brand recognition. And to me, if Ubisoft is wanting to follow brand recognition within their ranks, The Division is one of the top 5 that does have that recognition. If you know any other game that probably will be prioritized above The Division in the top 5, let me know in the comment section. But make sure that you also answer my question. What would you do if you're running the ship at Ubisoft? Would you continue to stick with the brand names out there, or would you bury down and serve your communities internally whom have made you profitable interactions in the past? So these are pretty much my thoughts continuing this video. I really appreciate you guys' time and audience. There's so much to actually pay attention to, and I can't even put it all in one video. But again, maybe I'll give you guys maybe another set of my synopses and so on and so forth, and we'll see how things go. So thanks for watching. Peace out.